On the morning of April 11th, 2025, the sun poured its golden light through the towering stained glass windows of St. Peter's Basilica. The air was thick with incense, the scent drifting in slow, curling patterns across the vast, open space. The faithful gathered in quiet expectation, hearts pounding, eyes lifted toward the central balcony. It was not an ordinary day in Vatican City. It was a day that would mark history, a moment that would echo far beyond the walls of the Basilica. Luis Antonio Tagle, a humble man born in the busy streets of Manila, stepped into the most powerful role in the Catholic Church. From that moment forward, he would be known as Pope Luis I. The world was watching. Cameras from every corner of the globe focused on that balcony. Inside homes, churches, cafes, schools, and even in the streets, people held their breath, waiting to witness a rare and powerful moment. For the first time in centuries, the leader of the Catholic Church would not come from Europe. He would not wear the history of Rome in his voice. He would carry the rhythm of Asia, the strength of the Filipino people, and the gentle compassion that had marked his entire life. He was no stranger to the Church or to the global stage, yet this day felt different. It was heavy with meaning. It was history in motion. Luis Tagle's rise through the Church was marked not by ambition, but by service. He had walked the streets of Manila as a priest, comforting the poor, offering prayers to the sick, and sitting down with those who simply needed someone to listen. He was not a man of wealth or grandeur, but of quiet strength and humility. Over the years, his sincerity, his warmth, and his dedication to faith had touched millions. As Archbishop of Manila and later as Cardinal, he became known not just for his deep knowledge of theology, but for his ability to connect with people, ordinary people, struggling people, forgotten people. Now that same man stood before the world draped in papal robes, the weight of tradition on his shoulders, and yet his smile remained soft and kind. As the chants of ancient hymns echoed through the basilica, Pope Luis I did not appear overwhelmed. He stood firm, dignified, and calm, his hands gently folded in front of him, his eyes scanning the sea of faces before him, and beyond that reaching into the hearts of those watching from far away. This moment was more than a personal journey. It was a movement, a shift in the very foundation of the Church. For too long, leadership had been confined to a narrow path, shaped by tradition and geography. But on that day, April 11th, the story of the Church took a new direction. The Church was no longer centered in the familiar corners of Europe. It had opened its arms wider. It had embraced its true identity as a global family. The election of Pope Luis I spoke volumes. It was a message of inclusion, of change, of a future not bound by the past. The ceremony blended old and new, the marble columns, the golden altar, the solemn voices chanting in Latin, all whispered of centuries gone by. But the flashing lights of media cameras, the online streams, the headlines being written in real time, they reminded everyone that this was a new chapter. And at the center of it all stood Pope Luis I, bridging two worlds, the sacred and the modern, the old and the yet to come. The people who had followed his journey from the streets of Manila felt an overwhelming pride. For them, this was not just a religious victory. It was a celebration of identity. It was proof that faith, compassion, and commitment can rise from the humblest of beginnings to touch the highest levels of leadership. Pope Luis I was not just the Pope of the Vatican. He was their Pope, a man who had walked among them, not above them. As he approached the edge of the balcony, the crowd fell into a deep silence. It was as if the very air held its breath. Millions watched in silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any words. He looked out at the crowd, his expression calm but thoughtful. Then he began to speak. His voice was steady, his English clear and accented. Each word was chosen with care, carrying the weight of not only tradition, but of hope. He spoke of unity, of healing, of serving the poor and the forgotten. He spoke of a world torn by conflict, of a church called to bring peace, not division. His words touched on the need for compassion, for simplicity, for humility. Every sentence seemed to land gently yet deeply, like seeds planted in the hearts of those who listened. And then, towards the end of his speech, something changed. He paused. It was not the kind of pause that came from searching for words. It was a deliberate moment of silence. His eyes moved slowly across the crowd. It was as if he was trying to make sure every soul present was truly listening. Then he said something that would spark endless debate and reflection. "A new covenant rises," he said. Just 4 words. But they struck like lightning. The phrase echoed across the square. It was carried by the breeze into the ears of those gathered. It slipped through the cameras and microphones into homes and churches and classrooms. It left people wondering, what did he mean, the new covenant? What was this covenant? What did it mean to rise? What path was he referring to? These questions stirred in the minds of the faithful. Theologians immediately began to search ancient texts. Scholars and priests pored over scriptures and past papal speeches. Was this a prophecy? Was it a reform? Was it a renewal of the Church's mission? Or was it something entirely new? Some believed it was a signal for deep change, a call to strip the Church of its excesses and return to its roots. A Church that once grew from the dusty streets of Jerusalem, that once gathered in humble homes, that once preached with empty hands and full hearts. They saw in his words a return to that spirit, a promise to build a church not of power but of service. Others believed it was a call for unity, not just within the Catholic faith, but across religions. In a world so divided by beliefs, ideologies, and politics, his words seemed to reach across those walls. They saw in the new covenant a message of shared humanity, of spiritual friendship between different faiths. Still others saw it as something even more personal, a call for inner transformation, for a deeper, quieter faith, not one shouted from pulpits, but one lived in daily kindness, in silent prayers, in the way we treat each other when no one is watching. The mystery deepened, and yet perhaps that was his intention. Perhaps he did not want to give all the answers. Perhaps the power of the moment was in the question itself, in asking people to think, to reflect, to pray, in inviting the world to find its own meaning in those 4 simple words. In the weeks that followed, conversations about the new covenant exploded across the world. In churches, in universities, in online forums, people debated its meaning. Priests gave sermons on it, writers penned essays, youth groups held discussions. In small villages and large cities, the phrase became a spark, a quiet fire that lit the hearts of many. And all the while, Pope Louis I did not rush to explain. He continued to lead with quiet strength. He visited the poor. He spoke to children. He met with leaders of other religions. His actions, simple and kind, began to give shape to the mystery he had spoken. Was this the covenant? A life lived with purpose, compassion, and humility? Was the new covenant not written in books, but lived in deeds? As time passed, more and more people began to see the answer not in grand declarations, but in small acts of love. Still, the mystery remains, and perhaps it always will. Perhaps the new covenant is not a destination, but a journey, a path each person must walk, a whisper that leads the heart, not with force, but with faith. Under the watchful statues of saints, beneath the soaring ceilings of the basilica, the new pope quietly goes about his work. He does not seek the spotlight. He does not chase headlines. He moves slowly, gently, like a river shaping the land over time. And with each step, he carries the hopes of millions, those who have long felt unheard, those who have waited for change, those who look not to power but to love. The image of that day, April 11th, will stay with us for a long time. The golden light